can talk about hard science. I've already referenced the neurology of the human system. So our nervous system, right, it controls all movement, all integration of movement, cognitive thinking, everything is intertwined there. Let's start here. 11 of the past 14 studies conducted in North America that branched back as far as the late 1960s have shown conclusively that, again, 11 of the last 14 studies have shown conclusively that daily physical free play affected academic performance positively. Now, that may be wonderful, and it may be an aha moment for people watching, but really, if you understand the science of neurology, you know that movement centers in the brain and cognitive centers are all part of the same network. So, of course, daily physical play has a tremendous impact on cognition, how we think, how we deduce, deductive reasoning, stress relief. A whole number of things are involved as to why 11 of those 14 studies showed conclusively that physical daily free play affected academic performance favorably. The caveat here, it's not really a caveat, it's just a part B, is that the remaining studies, 11 to 14 showed conclusively, the remaining studies, 12, 13, and 14, three respective studies, did not suggest that daily physical play was not instrumental in academic performance. They just felt there were too many X factors to say conclusively that it was. So, that's a lot of research to show you this stuff works. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you talked about outcome at the beginning, and it got me really excited to go into this particular part of what I wanted to say. When we're working with young kids in any setting, be it sport, fitness, kids who have sensory integration, dysfunction, it could be anything of those varieties. When we're working with young kids, we have to work with of what's called outcome-based coaching. Outcome-based coaching simply means this. Here, Mikey, here's a medicine ball. Pick it up, put it in your chest, and throw it as far as you can that direction. Now, if Mikey does that, then you give him a big high five, you go have him get the medicine ball, start again, and do it all over again. What we want with young people is the outcome, not the form or the numbers. Meaning we're not going to critically analyze the biomotors of how Mikey's throwing the ball. We're not going to teach him how to summate forces better or how to be more fluid in his carry. We're going to simply say, pick up a ball and throw it as hard as you can. And if he does that, we're going to applaud him, big high five, and have him do it again. Outcome-based coaching is the critical key for all work done with kids roughly 6 through 9 and even 80% of which 10 through 13. So really 6 through 13 years old, it's primarily outcome-based coaching. Now if you backtrack and you think, what is the essence of outcome-based coaching? If I'm not teaching squat patterns or deadlifts or sprint technique or deceleration, acceleration, what is the essence of outcome-based coaching? It's simply play. It's simply doing that. Give the kids a medicine ball. Give them some cones. Give them a ladder. Give them anything you want. And say, here, guys, do this. And then watch and marvel as they do that. And if they don't do it great, who cares? They're smiling. They're having a good time. That's what really matters. Any activity is good activity. We've gotten caught into the paradigm of practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And we've gotten caught in the other paradigm of the 10,000 hour rule that suggests any sort of expertise must be gained from 10,000 hours of concerted work in that particular area of study or sport, etc. And that's true. But what's also true is that if we do not give the central nervous system time to play in an outcome-based way, we are cutting off the potential to grow into more finite skill orientation when we're in our adolescence, when sports specificity is truly about to happen. So I want trainers, coaches, anyone listening right now to understand the relevance of what we're talking about. And I can look at it from my own perspective. And Rodney, something you and I discussed and you mentioned after my intro, I shut up and listened for 5 years. If I have any expertise whatsoever in the areas of long-term athlete development or developmental fitness, it's because I went through a half decade of absorbing as much as I could. without trying to critically analyze or dispute or argue or make perfect. I simply listened and paid attention and applied. All of that amounted to outcome-based work I was doing. It was not rigid. It was not perfect. I was not gifted as a coach by any stretch within those 5 years. I was applying concepts I was being taught by a coach in an outcome-based way, and through trial and error, I would figure out what the right methodologies were from a training perspective, from a programming perspective, from a coaching and communication perspective. And that leads me probably to my final bit of diatribe on the neurology, is that there's something very, very specific that more trainers and coaches who work with kids need to understand. It's called CNS Blueprinting. And what that infers is simply this. Our central nervous systems are one big blank slate. They're a big chalkboard, okay? And we have an innate understanding from birth of knowing where mechanical efficiency is. And you know what? I actually phrased that wrong. We don't know where mechanical efficiency is, but we do know that it exists inherently in our nervous systems. And what that means is that even as children, when we shoot a basketball, throw a baseball, attempt a squat, of course, our first attempts are not going to be accurate. But our bodies inherently, intrinsically know that. And we'll start searching for proper mechanical efficiency. Now, see how I said that? We'll start searching for proper mechanical efficiency. What is going to disable us from doing that incredibly valuable search is having a coach try to teach it to us and try to explain and over-explain and correct when we do it wrong. CNS blueprinting simply means this. We know mechanically right from wrong. We don't know perfect, but we know right from wrong, which means kids must be given the opportunity to explore, to move, to experience, to try things with very limited positive coaching cues in a gameplay environment that's primarily based on, hey, good job, Johnny, but every once in a while, a small little anecdote of, here, try this. That's perfectly fine. 20% of the coaching can come in the form of very slight instructional change. But really, we want these kids to explore. We want them to move. We want them to figure out for themselves what's right and what's wrong. Now, Ronnie, if you can imagine what happens over 5, 6, 7, 8 years of exploring and learning and being given small critique of how to get better, but primarily just getting better because we're experiencing, the nervous system becomes intelligent. It becomes wired to understand mechanical efficiency and inefficiency. And then as we grow older and we start applying more advanced training concepts, be it speed or strength or power, Olympic lift, kettlebell, whatever it might be, we have the innate ability to take what we know to be true and apply it now to a different segment of movement. But the ability to do that is predicated entirely on how large a warehouse we developed in terms of physical intelligence when we were young, which all boils back to the same point. You have to let kids play. You have to let them experience. Gym class and every training session that you perform with kids 6 through 13 should be comprised primarily of freedom of movement. Explore what coordination means, because there are different elements to it. There's balance and rhythm, kinesthetic differentiation, and spatial awareness. All of those things are involved in coordination, which is the essence of what we want kids to be, more coordinated. So explore how to create balance games, how to create kinesthetic differentiation games, how to create spatial awareness games, and play them. Organized play is a beautiful way to indoctrinate kids into socialization, to indoctrinate kids into love of movement, and to provide them with the requisite time they need to build as much physical intelligence through their central nervous systems as they possibly can. So the long and short, Ronnie, is simply this. The power of play is not a good idea for kids. It is a required idea. They absolutely must be given the opportunity to play, have fun, and experience. Without that, you are risking an overweight adult who never learned to love to move. Without that, you're risking never, ever becoming a qualified sports specialist in any sport, because you do not have the requisite central nervous system intelligence and warehouse of ability to apply, be it a different sport or a positional specificity. Play. It's what's new. We have to get back to play. Physical culture is everything. So, Rodney, with that, I'm sure I talked right over there, but with that, I hope I gave you and the community of PTAG at least something to sink their teeth into as to what we need to do as an industry.
And if someone didn't pick something up out of that, then we need to check your biorhythm. And Brian, that was fantastic. You know, one thing that you talked about right there at the very end is if we don't play, we now have the propensity for an obese adult.
Yes.
And if we look at all the things that you talked about, it goes so far even beyond the obese adult, because if you don't play, you don't have the same cognitive ability. And
yes.
if you don't have the same cognitive ability, you now are set up for Alzheimer's disease, which right now in the U.S. I think is the #5 killer. So when we start talking about all these things that you mentioned, you start talking about the cognitive impact, you start talking about the physical impact, which in essence are one and the same. And the Roy Sugarman video that we talked about, he talks about how the movement and emotion are the same. They come from the same thing. The brain and movement, you can't separate. So when we start talking about, the reason we pulled this topic out is because all the things that you just touched on are the same things that everyone is talking about in their respective fields of expertise, and it's to create the awareness that the play is an essential component of what we do, and if we don't bring the fun back into it, and the thing that I love that you talked about is when we talk about movement, and you talk about cognition, and you talk about humor, laughing, and the fun aspect, all of those utilize the same basic brain structures. And I think if we could just put our heads around that and say, okay, well, what ultimately is one of the major controllers of the body? Well, the brain has a major influence on what happens and how we process things. So if all three of those, the fun aspect, the humor, the laughing, the movement, the cognition, if they share the same structures and circuits, maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something there. Brian, I can't thank you enough on behalf of the community, because that was absolutely brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant, and there's so much there that I'm going to go back and listen to that quite a few times. I have the fortune of doing that, and I hope other people do.